I invite you now to journey with Jesus and the disciples to the upper room.
Jesus sat at table with his friends. He would share this final feast before the end. He gathered them around him and he said,
"The human one will be rejected, will be put to death and rise once more. But woe to the one who rejects him, who denies him, who betrays him."
I will never leave you, I will not forsake, I will not reject you, Jesus. I could not betray my faith in you.
The shore. You are not the one I looked for, not the one the people cried for, not the one I could have died for. You are not what I expected. You are more.
Take and eat this, all of you. This is my body given up for you. Take and drink this, all of you. This is the cup of my blood given up for you. When you break the bread, when you share the cup, remember me, remember me.
I am not the one you call back at the shore. I have seen too much of pain now. I have learned of loss and gain now. When they flee, I will remain now. May I help bring in your reign now and be more. On that night when I knew where his life would lead him, I brought my oil to anoint his head, and I wept as I heard the words he said.
I must walk through the valley to the other side. There is no turning back now. There is no place to hide. Now my God waits to greet me, and when I have died, walk on, walk on.
I remember how he said to
Walk
us,
on,
just have faith in me.
walk on into the valley.
You will soon see before you a representation of Leonardo da Vinci's painting, The Last Supper, just as it appeared on the wall of the church of Santa Maria dei Grazie in Milan in 1495. At that time, da Vinci was experimenting with a new fresco technique, which turned out to be a failure. And for many years, the painting was nothing more than an impressive ruin. Recently, however, the painting has been restored to its original beauty. What has always remained as complete and whole as it was 500 years ago is what the painting represents, one of the last times Jesus spent with his disciples before his crucifixion. When Jesus broke bread with the disciples, he said,
"Know this to be true, my friends. The bread that God gives is the one that's come down from heaven, the one that is with you now. Take and share this bread and all that you have seen and heard with all of your brothers and sisters." Take and eat, for this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. This cup is the new covenant made by God with my blood, which is shed for you. Drink all of it.
If you can, try to imagine yourself at the table with Christ that night. What advice would you give the Master who says this is the last time you'll be together? How would you interpret the things you've seen over the past 3 years? Jesus says your faith will be tested. Are you strong enough? Imagine what all of these disciples must have been going through that night. Some of them came to the Passover feast hoping Jesus would declare himself to be the Messiah, and that this declaration would mean the end of foreign rule. Others still struggled with their understanding of Jesus' teachings and miracles. Rather than clearing up their doubts and fears, Jesus spoke only in mysteries. He left them with many unanswered questions, many unfulfilled expectations, and one frightening accusation of betrayal.
Truly, I say to you, one of you is going to betray me, one of you who eats with me now.
Is it I, Lord?
Go and do what you have to do.
My name is Thaddeus. Our Judaic history teaches us that a Messiah will come to restore Israel to its former glory and to free us from Roman rule. And I believe with all my heart that Jesus is that Messiah. For too long, our people have lived under an oppression that crushes our spirit and burdens our minds. Jesus says to our oppressor, "I do not think that I have come to make things easy. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." And he showed them that sword the day that he drove the money changers from the temple here in Jerusalem, saying that they had changed that sacred place into a den of thieves. Jesus wants to release our people from the infinite number of rigid laws of the Pharisees, who claim that their laws are the only way to separate the believers from the sinners. But Jesus says it is not the law that keeps our faith, but that we must use our hearts as well as our minds to guide us in that faith. For example, the law says that it is forbidden for us to work on the Sabbath. But Jesus asked, if your sheep fell into a pit on the Sabbath, wouldn't you rescue it? I shout, yes! We shouldn't obey those laws which oppress us. But Jesus, He shakes his head. He tells me that I should pray for my enemies and pray for those who persecute me. I want him to show the world his power, but he tells me to be patient and obedient. He commands that I put aside my anger and replace it with responsibility. But is it responsible for him to ask us to follow him to victory and then meet for this Passover meal in secret? I say, Lord, why is it that you show us, your disciples, who you truly are, but not the world? Jesus answers, if a man loves me, he will keep my word, and the Father will love him, and the Father and I will make our home with him. I do love Jesus, and I want to keep his word. I do believe that he is the Messiah, but I struggle to understand what this all means for me. He says that if I have but the faith of a mustard seed, that I can move a mountain. Does this mean that I, with my unsteady faith, can make a change in our troubled world? Jesus says soon my faith will be tested. I pray that I will have the strength of spirit to follow his teaching wherever they may take me.
I am Andrew. I was an ordinary fisherman before I chose to follow Jesus as his first apostle. My family asked how I knew so quickly that Jesus was the one to believe in, but I couldn't explain it. But then John the Baptist said to me, "Behold the Lamb of God." And I knew immediately that I had found the one and only Messiah. I am not a scholar, and I often have problems trying to understand the lessons that Jesus tries to teach us, except when he uses parables. Parables are stories that explain in simple language ideas that are often difficult for humble, uneducated people like me. Once he told the story of the sower of seeds. He said some seeds were thrown on the path and eaten by birds, while other seeds were strewn on rocky soil and could not grow. And there were other seeds that were choked out by thorns. But the ones in the good soil multiplied. This parable tells us that if you hear the word and try to understand it, your faith will bear fruit. I try to serve Jesus by using my faith to bear fruit for him. One day, some Greeks asked to see him, but the other disciples said, "Go away!" But I took them to our master. I thought it was important for them to hear what Jesus had to say. When there was a sermon on the mountain, I was the one who found the young boy with the 5 barley loaves and the 2 fish. But Philip said, it was a waste of time to bring such a meager helping to serve such a large crowd. But I took it to Jesus. And that day I saw him feed more than 5,000 people, and there was food left over. And after they were fed, they stayed and listened to his message. I am a simple man. I know I'm not a great speaker, nor am I a creative thinker. but I am proud that Jesus uses me in this important work. I will serve Jesus with all the talents that I possess, no matter how meager. And through me, he will feed thousands more.
I am Simon Peter. My brother is Andrew. We are fishermen by trade, but unlike my brother, I speak my own mind, I speak it loud, and I speak it often. When Andrew first told me about this Jesus and his preaching, I laughed at him. I mean, what did my much older brother know about a Messiah? Why, he went off and left his nets in the water and just kept talking and going on and on and on about this Jesus. So I had to go and see for myself. And after meeting Jesus, I found him to be everything that a Messiah should be and everything that I was not. He was steady and confident where I was rash and impatient. When he tried to get me to listen to his lessons, I argued at every turn. This made Andrew regret bringing me in to be a disciple. But Jesus knew something and saw something in me that I did not see or know myself. Jesus had only known me for a short time when he gave me a new name. He called me Peter, which means the rock. The other disciples laughed. They knew that I was nothing like a rock at all. I was not steady and confident. But Jesus knew that this was a name that I could grow into if I listened to his lessons. And once I had complained to him that I, had given up everything to follow him. But he just turned and patiently said that for those that give up their family, their wealth, their friends, whatever, they will be repaid 100-fold, including eternal life. And he also said, those that always strive to be first shall be last. Well, this told me that my greediness to always be first and always to be the best was not going to work in the kingdom of God. And just recently, Jesus has told us that he's going to be imprisoned and killed. I said, this cannot be. You are all powerful. You are the Son of God. This cannot happen. He turned to me and said, you do not understand how God works. Get behind me, Satan. You are not on God's side. This hurt. Me, Satan? Me, not on God's side? This just made me want to work that much harder to always be on his side. And lately there's been a lot of talk, a lot of gossip about a new beginning led by this Jesus. He denies it, of course, but then he asked us disciples, well, what do men say about this? Some of the disciples say, some believe you are John the Baptist because they believe he is not dead. Others say you are Elijah come back from the dead. But I say, I know who you are. You are the Son of the living God. You are Jesus Christ. And with a knowing smile, he turned to me and he said, God bless you, Simon. You did not get those answers from teachers or from books. You got that from our Father in heaven who has told you this. And I tell you, Peter, you are the rock. And on this rock I shall build my church. Now, Jesus has forced me to build my life on the strongest foundation of all, which is our Lord's teachings. and I know that I have become the rock that he has always seen in me. My faith will always be strong, and I will always be faithful to him. Others may fall away, but I will never deny him. Never. I will not desert him.
I am Philip from Bethsaida in Galilee, and I have always been a man who understands the facts. So when I heard Jesus was coming to Bethsaida, I thought for sure he wanted me to be his guide. But when he looked into my eyes and said, "Follow me," I knew I would never be his guide, but he would be mine for the rest of my days. Filled with joy and excitement, I ran to find my friend Nathaniel to share the good news with him as he read his Torah under a fig tree. I explained all about Jesus to Nathaniel, but he was more of a cynic than I was. I finally was able to convince him to at least go meet with Jesus, and that day, Nathaniel and I both became his disciples. We traveled with Jesus all throughout Palestine and witnessed many miracles. The blind receiving sight, the lame walking, and one that will be on the top of my mind forever. One day, Jesus was preaching to a huge crowd, over 5,000 people. The people were hanging on his every word and were reluctant to leave. As the hours passed and everyone got hungry, Jesus looked to me and said, "Philip, how are we going to feed all these people?" Why would he ask such a question? It couldn't be done. I answered Jesus, 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread to give everybody even one bite. Just then, Andrew came up leading a young boy, and he said, "Master, I have a young lad here who has 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish." I turned away to hide my smirk. What would such meager fare do for all of these people? I knew not what Andrew was thinking. But Jesus accepted the small offering, and to my amazement, he blessed and broke the bread and gave it to us to distribute to the people. I have no words to explain what happened next, but this enormous crowd ate and ate until their hunger was more than served. Jesus says, "Collect all the crumbs that are left over." It took 5 huge baskets to hold them all. Jesus had shown us once again, all we need do is believe in him, and he will take our meager offerings and turn them into miracles. Jesus calls God Father. I asked him this evening, "Jesus, show us the Father that we may know him." Jesus responded with sorrow in his voice, "You have been with me all this time, Philip, and still you do not understand? To see me is to see the Father. I do not make up these words I speak to you. The Father who resides inside me crafts them all. Believe me, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. If you cannot believe that, believe the miracles you see me perform." My cheeks grew hot with shame. After all this time, am I still dependent on a cynical need for facts and even more proof? Jesus is the Messiah. My heart tells me this. But am I truly worthy of him? Jesus, often my doubts and misunderstandings are strong. Help me understand.
I was Levi. For many years, I was a tax collector on the overland route outside Capernaum. It was a choice spot, and I was very fortunate to have been able to purchase such a lucrative position. I had been reared in a strict religious household. Alphaeus, my father, saw to my brother James and my strict training in the Torah. Father was loyal to the temple and regularly paid his tithe. But I could never understand why he wanted to give away his money like that. My love of possessions started early. I loved clothing, houses, livestock. But I especially loved the tinkling golden shower of coins falling into my lockbox. When I started my profession as a tax collector, my horrified family cut me off. But what was so wrong about what I was doing? Man has to live, doesn't he? There is no difference between having to pay a portion of your wealth to the temple and having to pay a portion to the emperor in tax. Besides, I always took a far smaller percentage for myself from what I collected from the Jews than did my fellow tax gatherers. So, Levi continued to live his life exactly the way he wanted to. Until Jesus came for me. I saw many sights on the overland route, but the strangest sight of all was Jesus and his mixed bag of followers. People from all walks of life flocked to him, but especially the blind, the sick, and the lame. I found it disgusting, and yet strangely intriguing. I would secretly watch for Jesus to pass by my customs house anytime I heard he was in the area. One day, I was working in my office when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up, and there was Jesus, standing in my doorway. His eyes pierced right through me. "Levi," he said, "I've come to heal you of your great sickness. Leave all this and follow me." Great sickness? What could he be talking about? But then, in his eyes, I found understanding. My sickness was a sickness of the soul, leaving me in greater need of healing than all the beggars and lepers who flocked around him. I felt a great heaviness lift from my heart. Suddenly, my great wealth meant nothing to me. Only Jesus could feed and satisfy my greatest need. Deciding to follow Jesus that day was the turning point in my life. I even have a new name, Matthew, which means the gift of Jehovah. I still can't believe he chose me. But Jesus always looks beyond outward appearances to the person within. He saw something of value and worth in even my impoverished and empty soul. That day, when he looked so deeply into my soul, my life began again. He changed me. And through me, he touches others, changing them to his purpose too. I gladly laid down my wealth for him, and I would just as gladly lay down my life.
I am James, brother of Levi, as he was known when we were growing up. We came from a devout family, so it was a terrible shock when Levi chose to live a sinful life as a tax collector. He had paid his commission to that hated tyrant, Herod Antipas, with his own soul. By his own choosing, he had cut himself off from our family, much to the shame and heartbreak of our parents. I hated Levi for what he had done to them. So I was surprised to come home one day and find him talking excitedly about some wonderful new teacher, and my parents hanging on every word. He claimed that this man, Jesus, had changed his life. But I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A tiger can't change its stripes. Still, his words about Jesus intrigued me, and I decided to go see this new teacher for myself. Jesus was all and more than Levi had said he was. And on that day, I too answered Jesus' call to become a disciple. But when Levi rushed over to welcome me, I stopped him with a cold stare. I didn't want anyone to know that I had such a despicable sinner for a brother. Since he was calling himself Matthew now, I was confident that no one would ever find out about our relationship. There are two other sets of brothers in Jesus' band of 12, all four hardy fishermen. James and John are argumentative, especially with each other. But let anyone else threaten them, and the other one is there in an instant. The other two brothers, Peter and Andrew, also argue. Peter is the impulsive one, while Andrew is more of a dreamer. Still, their love for each other is open and visible. But there was too much shame in acknowledging Matthew. No one had a brother like mine. One day, Peter was upset with Andrew over some slight. Exasperated, he turned to Jesus and cried, "Master, how many times must I forgive this brother of mine? 7 times?" Jesus shook his head quietly. "Not 7 times, Peter. 70 times 7. Jesus glanced at me, his eyes searing into my heart. Shaken, I sought Jesus out privately. "Master," I said, "I understand now. You can indeed change lives. And I am ready to forgive my brother Matthew." Jesus looked at me with great tenderness. "So you think you understand, James? Yet I tell you that Matthew has already reconciled himself with God and with man. It is not for him to seek forgiveness. Your hatred and jealousy has corrupted your soul, James. You are the one that needs forgiveness." Stunned, I sought a quiet place for thought and soul searching. Soon I saw Matthew watching me from a distance. I rushed to him and threw myself at his feet. "Matthew," I cried, "please forgive my hardness of heart." He lifted me to my feet, and as he embraced me, he said the sweetest word I have ever heard: "Brother." Jesus is the most incredible man I have ever met. I truly believe he is the Son of God, and I'm thankful daily for his ability to transform lives, especially Matthew's and my own. Sometimes his words are frightening and confusing, but I know that life without Jesus is death. I will never leave Jesus.
I am Simon, not Simon Peter, but Simon the Zealot. I was a fighting man, a zealot, a member of a small army who wants to take back from the Roman tyrants what rightfully belongs to Israel. I was a self-righteous and violent man, well trained in using the cover of darkness to bring death and revenge to those who oppressed us. Jesus promises a new kingdom to those who follow him. I thought he meant a new self-governing Israel, but I soon realized his kingdom was something completely different. Yes, he promised to lead us to glory, but he said he would do it through gentleness and charity. He said, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But that won't get us anywhere. Here's what I propose. Don't hit back at all. If someone strikes you, stand there and take it and turn the other cheek. Stand strong and let the shame be his. But me, let someone strike me and turn the other cheek? Never. I made the decision to follow Jesus, but in my heart I believed he would be the one to change. I found out how wrong I was when he asked Matthew to join the disciples. I recognized him instantly. He was a tax collector, a symbol of all I hated about Roman rule. He had used the name Levi in his position of authority to bleed his fellow Jews dry. He was a publican, a man so unethical that the law forbids him to testify in court because no one would believe him. Why, he's not even allowed in the synagogue. Yet Jesus foolishly chose him to do sacred work. Well, I was well trained in how to correct such a mistake. Several days later, the apostles were gathered in Simon Peter's house. Jesus asked that someone go fetch Matthew from the village. I volunteered immediately. Now was my chance to get Matthew alone and do what needed to be done. As I prepared to leave, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Jesus. He said, Simon, I tell you, the way to God, the way to true life is hard and requires your total attention. Jesus' teachings will get my full attention after I rid the world of one loathsome tax collector. As I stepped into the sunlight on the road, I turned to see Jesus standing in the doorway, and he said to me, what good does it do to gain everything you want and lose the real you in the process? Be on your way, Simon. Suddenly, I wasn't as eager to go as I had been. So farther down the road, I turned back once again to see Jesus standing in the doorway, and he raised his hand to me, and all at once, my chest felt like it had been hit by lightning, and I fell to the ground. And I clutched my head as it nearly exploded, exploding with understanding. There was no mistake. I knew now why Matthew and I had been chosen to follow Jesus. To both of us, so wretched and full of hostility, were chosen to prove beyond a doubt that God's word can transform and use any man to his glory. Any man. Even me. I ran all the way to Matthew, and when our eyes met, we embraced. And I knew that the both of us had been changed forever. My life with Christ has been a great joy to me. I've experienced and seen how gentle ways and quiet words can be strong enough to change a life. How it can change many lives. And I will serve him always for all my days.
My name is Nathaniel, and unlike most of the other disciples, I am a learned and educated man. I don't know why I'd never heard about Jesus. Perhaps it was because I wasn't interested in what I thought was nothing more than a common, traveling preacher. Many had claimed to be the Messiah. I got tired of hearing about it. One day, while I was studying the Torah, in the shade under a fig tree, my friend Philip interrupted with what he thought was great news. He shouted, "We have found the one that Moses wrote about in the book of law. We have found the Messiah. It is Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth." I shrugged, put down my reading, and listened patiently. But I was thinking the entire time, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Nazareth is an average, commonplace town. No great center of culture or information. So, hoping that he'd go away and let me get back to my studying, I said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" But Philip ignored my cynicism and begged me to go see for myself. I was reluctant, but he was enthusiastic. So, just to prove to myself that this Jesus was nothing special, I went with him. Along the road, we came upon a group of men. Jesus was one of them. He looked right at me and said, "Here comes a true Israelite, one without a false bone in his body." Even before he met me, he knew me as a man who spoke my heart and my mind. "How do you know who I am?" I asked. Jesus looked at me. "I saw you sitting under the fig tree, Nathanael, before Philip called you." I looked into his face, and suddenly I saw all the truth I had been looking for, all my life standing there in the flesh before me. I fell to my knees and cried, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." He said, "You become a believer simply because I say I saw you sitting under the fig tree? You haven't seen anything yet. Before this is over, you will see the heavens open and angels descend upon the Son of Man." And I have. I have seen miracles to make believers of the most cynical of men. I have heard wise words to turn the darkest of hearts towards the light. And I have learned more in the last 3 years than I have in all my years of studying. Everything that I have seen only proves to me that Jesus is the true, authentic Messiah, sent to us as the prophets foretold. He is real, and I believe with my heart and my mind that he has come to bring us closer to God.
I'm James, a son of Zebedee. My brother John and I earned our living by fishing in Capernaum with our friends Andrew and Simon. My father had built a prosperous enterprise for us to inherit. But when we met Jesus, we knew there was no other life for us. Father was hurt and angry, but we convinced both of our parents to come listen to Jesus. Father came away with shining eyes and gave us his blessing, saying, "Go, my sons. If only I were a younger man, I'd go with you." For almost 3 years now, we've been with Jesus, and it has not always been easy. Both John and I are quick to anger, slow to forgive. And some of Jesus' teachings, such as love thy enemy and turn the other cheek, are hard for us to accept. Jesus humorously gave us the nicknames Sons of Thunder to remind us to keep our tempers in check. So one time, we were going to Jerusalem to worship at the temple. And for some reason, we were traveling through the province of Samaria, where the people there worship outside of the temple, making them unbelievers of the worst sort. And as the sun set, we found ourselves in this small Samaritan town where no one would give us food or lodging. I was furious that these filthy Samaritans would dare to treat my master in such an unwelcome fashion. John and I stomped over to Jesus. We said, "Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy these people?" But Jesus rebuked us strongly, saying the Son of Man did not come to destroy, but to save. John and I looked at each other and we felt our tempers cool. Perhaps the whole reason we were traveling through Samaria is because Jesus knew that we needed another lesson and patience and forgiveness. And Jesus must have seen through our impetuous spirits to some inner good when he took the two of us and Peter up a high mountain where he miraculously changed before our eyes. His robes glowed such a bright white that we had to shield our eyes. His body shone from within brighter than a noontime desert sun. We fell to our knees and covered our heads and trembled in fear as we heard a voice call down from heaven, "This is my son, chosen and marked by my love. He is the delight of my life. Listen to him." I will never understand why Jesus chose me, a poor, ignorant fisherman, to experience all of these things. But I know in my very soul that he is God's son, and wherever he goes, I will follow.
I am John, brother of James, and I am the youngest disciple. James and I fished for our father, Zebedee of Capernaum. One day, while we were in the boat, mending our nets, Jesus came by and said simply, "Come with me." James and I looked at each other. We had a prosperous future ahead of us in Capernaum, but because we have always been men of action, it took us only a moment to give it all up for something better. My brother and I are quick-tempered and strong-willed, and we believed that we could handle any situation. One evening, we were all in the boat. Jesus was sleeping after a full day of preaching to the crowds when suddenly a storm blew up. James, Peter, Andrew, and I tried desperately to get the boat back to shore, but despite all our experience as fishermen, the turbulent water was tearing the boat apart under our feet. We would surely drown. "Master," we sobbed, "save us." Jesus stood up and raised his hands to the howling winds and rain. Immediately, calm fell over the water, and the winds and rain ceased. We were saved. We were amazed how a simple wave of his hand was more powerful than anything we could do. At first, our parents didn't understand why we chose to go with Jesus. But after realizing how close we were to him, Mother felt it was her duty, out of love for her sons, to speak to Jesus on our behalf. Mothers. She sought him out with this request: "Lord, give your word that these two sons of mine will be awarded the highest places of honor in your kingdom, one at your right hand and one at your left hand." Jesus replied, "That is something only God can say." Then, turning to James and me, he said, "You have no idea what you're asking. Can you drink from the cup that I am about to drink?" We answered, "Lord, we can." But now I wonder if we can. It's so easy to say the words, but are we truly prepared to share in the suffering that the Master says will come tonight? Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be the greatest among you must first be the servant to all." Am I ready to serve all with everything I am? Lord, tell me, am I ready?
I'm Thomas, and I don't like what's been happening lately in Jerusalem. My friends tell me I always think the situation is worse than it really is. But this time, I'm right. Something terrible is going to happen, and Jesus knows it. You know, for a long time it was safe and easy to follow a man who performed miracles and offered peace and contentment to those who believed in him. But things are different now. Everyone expects something from him. Some want him to present them with riches. Some want him to perform more spectacular miracles. And the zealots want to force Jesus to destroy the Romans with a mighty show of strength. Men in power are afraid of a man who speaks of a new kingdom. And the common man don't understand how a simple carpenter could be king of the Jews. I have questions too. One time Jesus said, "Trust me. There's plenty of room in my Father's house. If that weren't so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? Then I'll come back so that you may follow and live with me there." But I said, "Master, we have no idea where you're going. How can you expect us to know the way?" Jesus replied, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." When Jesus announced we were going back to Jerusalem, all of us were afraid. He had nearly been stoned there during the Feast of Dedication. No one wanted to follow him back into such danger. But Jesus didn't come to save himself, but to help and to serve others. In his exasperation, I said, "Let us go with him then, even to die if need be." And so we've come back to Jerusalem. But there's evil on every side. The zealots staged a riot today in the temple, and many blamed Jesus. The Pharisees are denying his miracles, and they're calling his words blasphemy. Where are the crowds that praised him when he first entered the city? Where are his followers now, when we have to celebrate the Passover in hiding? I wish I could understand what was happening. I'm afraid for all of us, and especially for Jesus and for the one he says will betray him. Still, even if there is great suffering to come, I will not separate myself from my master. Jesus is the one, the only one, to truly know God. All of us have come too far to let doubt keep us from the truth.
I'm Judas Iscariot. Did you hear what he said when he offered me the food? I've been offered 30 pieces of silver to tell the authorities where he is, and he released me, setting me free to make my own choice. The money would help our cause. It would have forced him to declare himself so the whole world would know he is the true king. If it meant turning over the other disciples to the Roman authorities, I wouldn't hesitate. Jesus is far greater man than any of these. But are 30 pieces of silver enough for what Jesus has meant to us? For what he has meant to me? It is only to Jesus I have any loyalty. I owe the 11 nothing. It is hard for me to feel part of this group because I am Judean and the other disciples are Galilean. I'm often left out and snubbed. Indeed, several are coarse, uneducated fishermen, the profession itself making them unclean. And I get so impatient because they are so slow to understand the simplest things. It is only because I have great financial expertise that Jesus chose me treasurer of this small band of 12. But sometimes, I wonder why he even chose me at all. Why would Jesus want someone like me to be part of his ministry? But he did choose me. I have a prideful nature, and patience has never been one of my virtues. Jesus has helped me recognize this. I've been working on it. Just when I feel I've made some good progress, something intolerable happens. Like that woman pouring that costly ointment on Jesus' feet? Outrageous! That oil could have been sold for at least 300 denarii. I long for the day when Judea could break free from Roman rule. And I believe Jesus can make this happen. Yet, I can't understand why he does things the way he does. Why are we hidden away in this room? We should be out in the open, fighting to put him on his throne. But instead of preparing for the victory that Jesus deserves, he talks of his own betrayal and death. But I have a plan. I can force him to reveal himself. None of the other disciples know of my plan because these simpletons wouldn't understand. No matter. Jesus will understand. He has to understand. And when he comes into his kingdom, they will understand also. An amazing thought just came to me. Maybe this is why Jesus chose me to be a disciple, so that I might be the means for the Messiah to come into his kingdom. Maybe I was chosen not in spite of my faults, but because of them. When he passed me the plate, our fingers touched. His eyes bore into me. He said almost tenderly, "Go do what you have to do." Jesus knows. Somehow he knows. He even told me to do it. But what if it fails? What if I really do betray him tonight? What should I do? Jesus, help me. What should I do? I have decided. I will go. Yet, I turn one last time to look at Jesus. I will never forget my master's eyes, so full of sadness, pity, and love.
The meal is over. Soon Jesus and the disciples will leave for the Garden of Gethsemane, where he will ask them to stay and wait while he prays. Jesus alone knows the anguish that lies before him. But when he asks the disciples for their help in his time of need, they trade him for sleep and have none to give. They do not understand what will happen to the man they've followed so faithfully. They believe he's already given to them abundantly. What he has yet to give will test their strength and their faith. Jesus prays to the Father for relief from the suffering to come. If only there were another way. But there isn't. Not for Jesus and not for the man who will betray him. It is a lonely place, the Valley of the Skull. A place where only a whisper of hope exists, where only a quivering shadow of faith survives, as the darkening sky echoes with the sound of nails being driven into his flesh and into our soul.